Guys, I want to welcome you to another episode of the Advisory Board podcast where we bring in the brightest and the best brains from franchising to you so that you can learn from them how to grow a sustainable brand that will last. And I've got with me Patti Rother. You've probably met her, and if not, shame on you. But she's phenomenal, and there's a lot I want to share with you about her as we introduce her. We're going to be talking today a little bit about like how do you scale a brand without burnout and bloat? What are some tools and tricks and things you can do that will help you create scale and accelerate scale? We might talk about AI. You never know. With Patty, it's kind of hard not to. But Patty has been around in the industry 18 plus years now. She's been with many organizations that are known and respected. She's actually just started her own brand. It's called Root and Rise Franchise Development. Now, I'm going to give her a chance to tell you more about that, but I'll just say this. Patty's been leading or had senior roles in a ton of brands that you know, Noodles and Co., Garbanzo, Panera, Scent Hound, Blink Fitness, Frios, Gourmet Pop. So, I mean, she's got the type of experience that a lot of emerging and growing brands really want to tap into, which is, I think, well, I'll let her tell her story about why she founded it. But I think you'll find she's got some great insights in that area. In the industry, she also spent a lot of time serving and helping to lift up other people. She's the vice chair of the IFA's Pride Franchise Leadership Council. She's on the Women Franchise Committee. But now for the fun stuff, she was just posting and sharing about her personal life a little bit, but been married for 17 years. Her wife and three kids, they live in Colorado. You might not know this, but she's a bit of a witch doctor and a like an herbalist and just like a nerd about. She's like a closet gardening and landscaping junkie and influencer. So if you guys are into that kind of stuff, we spent probably too much time before this episode talking about that together. So anyway, we love Patty. Patty, thanks for being here and tell us a little bit more about what you're working on right now before we jump into the topic.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm happy to be here, and it was fun to just chat already. I'm excited about what we're doing. I'm essentially building a business where we can step in as your fractional chief development officer and help oversee sales, real estate, construction, and design, and really just help brands solve the problem that sometimes is franchise development as a whole, whether that be bottlenecks in getting people over the finish line to become new franchisees, or then getting those people open and operating and successful. I am bolstering that with a lot of technology because what I have found over the years is oftentimes there is a bigger issue in the lack of systems or technology support behind
Mhm.
the frandev efforts. And so often I find myself fixing tech stacks before I can really do the fun work of the franchise development or construction real estate piece. So, what I decided to do is to bring in some incredible tech folks and AI developers directly to help me bring that level of expertise to the brands that I work with. So you benefit both from kind of my expertise in development, but also a lot of tech support behind me to make me wildly efficient and also hopefully make your brand and your tech stack more efficient. So I'm excited about what we're doing.
Yeah, well, I love it. And guys, we'll share a little bit more at the end about how to get in touch with Patty if you have questions. But bear in mind that you want someone like Patty in your corner, especially if you're a growing brand or you're a lot of brands right now. They're like, lead volumes are down. We're kind of plateauing or we're backsliding. We're not growing the way we thought we would. It hasn't been the easiest start for the year for most people. And we could explain that away 100 different ways. But the reality is, if you feel like you're stuck in that space, then you probably want to give Patty a call. And she's also the type of person that would sit down with you and talk to you and give you some advice, even if she's not going to transact with you. It's one reason why I wanted her to come join me on the show because I trust her that way. So glad you're here with us. And let's dive into the topic a little bit.
Sure.
A lot of folks struggle to create scale, or they scale by burning themselves out, or they bloat their teams, and there are all these bad ways people scale. Do you mind sharing some of your insights? Like maybe start with lessons you've seen in the industry and how you'd recommend people start to think about scale a little differently.
Yeah, I mean, I think even just starting with scale, what does that actually mean? I think so many brands fall into the trap of selling units is the way to scale. If I can just sell more, then that's gonna kind of launch this whole process and solve a lot of the issues. I really think it's a both and scenario. Being well capitalized is part of that, and not having to rely on unit sales as your means of
Mhm.
revenue to then build the systems of support you need in order to get them open and operating and frankly successful. But it really is about thinking about that foundation to support where you want to be, right? Like start building it now before you need it at scale. So that's like your legal infrastructure, it's your operations and support for franchise owners. You want to get people open as quickly as possible, profitable as quickly as possible, and happy. Open, happy, profitable franchisees will fix everything
Mhm.
ahead of the line in terms of sales and, real estate, all of that. So if you can build the foundation of support and be thinking as if you're a larger brand and build the system you need before you need it, that is such a game-changing piece for brands that are kind of in it right now. I also think so many brands, because they're focusing on the selling and putting a lot of effort and a lot of their budget toward that one piece, where they miss is the operations and opening piece.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
so I've walked into and helped a lot of brands where they get to a certain open and operating point, like 7, 10, 12, but validation, which is not something they had to factor in when they were full selling, is now the biggest barrier to growth, future growth. Because what they did was they focused so much on the front end, they forgot about the back end. And now they have franchise owners that may be struggling or are unhappy or maybe not just producing the revenue that they thought they would be by now. Um, and that'll kill your sales pipeline really quickly.
Yeah.
We all know this to be true, but even as consumers, like I can read 50 positive reviews and read three negative ones where I'm like, I don't know. Is this a
Yeah.
place I want to eat? Is this a product I want to buy? Like our brains are literally wired to believe the negative thing over the positive thing. So they could talk to five amazing, happy franchise owners and two bad ones who are just going to say things that maybe don't validate what you've been telling them, and that messes up a lot for your sales team. So
Yeah.
even just thinking about the systems of support to build the machine you need in order to be a brand at 30 locations open, 50 locations open,
Mhm.
uh, and having the foresight to do that ahead of time.
Yeah, and can we talk about order here? Because I think most brands, well, not most, but a lot of them, especially emerging brands that I talk to, they come off of, man, this mindset of I just spent all this money, right, to become a franchise, and so
Mhm.
I've got to start getting some money back. I need to start selling units, and they're kind of primed to think that way. It depends on which channel they come through, right, to become a franchise. But should they be building the back end ops first, or should they start selling franchises first? Which comes first, the chicken or the
It's
egg?
like exactly what's good was what I was gonna say. It's a chicken and the egg scenario. For
Mhm.
some folks, they are might have chosen to franchise too early, meaning that if you cannot build what you need in order to get them open and operating without selling and using that revenue to help build, you might have just started and kind of launched into it a bit too early, in
Mhm.
my opinion.
Yeah.
I also think there is a scenario where if you're very intentional about who you're selling to, the regions you're selling in, and you can be really disciplined about that, there
Mhm.
is absolutely a way to grow intentionally a little bit like concentric circles from where your base might be, so
Yeah.
that that support that's needed isn't flying people cross country and isn't figuring out supply chain in a part of the country that maybe you weren't ready to start serving with whatever product it is that you're pushing. That allows you to be really intentional and strategic about what you need in order to get them open and operating.
Mhm.
But obviously, you got to get the sales going to offset the potential cost over here. Um, there is a way to do it both and with intentionality. And I am so one of those frandev people that like if I'm putting a marketing dollar behind a potential lead, it better be exactly the person I would want to sell. Like I'm fine with people coming across organically or through different vehicles on their own. But if I'm putting a dollar behind somebody, I want it to be in a market where we're available, a market that we think would make a great spot and a successful location. I
Mhm.
want it to be somebody with the background that I would want them to have or transferable skills that I would want them to have, and niche down that marketing audience so much so that you're being really intentional with your marketing spend and your dollars. Even deciding like if you're going to use consultants and broker groups potentially, letting them know exactly who it is you're going after and only those people so that you can even make the most out of those relationships as well. And
Mhm.
again, like I'm happy to pay a commission on a lead that I otherwise wouldn't have ever had, but
Mhm.
be really intentional about kind of who you're going after so that you're not throwing a ton of money at trying to sell
Mhm.
that you could otherwise be spending in building the infrastructure to get them open and operating as quickly as possible and with as much revenue as possible, right? Like that's the game over here.
Mhm.
Um, I think I actually just posted about this recently, but like the game is in franchise fees. The game is royalty.
Mhm.
And
Right.
you will not ever get to 50 units, 100 units, whatever goal you have kind of pie in the sky,
Mhm.
if you're not thinking about royalty revenue. That
Yeah.
is the goal. Is that's how you're going to run your business and how you're going to be successful. You have
Yeah.
to have open and operating locations in order to do that.
Well, it's sustainability, right? And boy, we got to backtrack and cover a couple of these things you've dropped on everyone today because you almost glaze over them like, yeah, of course, like moving through, but a lot of people don't get what you're saying, and or at least they're not modeling it. But
Mhm.
the whole idea of like royalty independence or royalty self-sufficiency is the goal, right? That is the goal. And if you can figure out a formula that gets you to that so you can scale while you're staying royalty self-sufficient, you've got yourself a highly sustainable franchise that will grow into the sunset, right? Until somebody comes and writes you a big check or you pass it on to the next generation because it's a legacy business for you, right? Like that's
Right.
the win. And I know brands that at 11 units or fewer are royalty self-sufficient. And I know some that have been in the hundreds, 200 plus, and they are living off of franchise fees.
Right.
That is nerve-wracking, right? That's like
Yeah.
terrifying. And it also compromises integrity, right? At least it has the tendency to lean people that way. If you're in a position where you have to sell or die,
Mhm.
then are you going to be as selective as you need to be as you're bringing people into the fold that will then help you with what you talked about earlier, the validation flywheel?
Right.
Sometimes not. Sometimes not.
Right.
Yeah.
And by the way, the royalty self-sufficiency number is going to keep changing because hopefully as your unit count grows, as locations are starting to open, you are also matching that with additional headcount, right? Like you go from one FBC to now two and then three because
Mhm.
you have the ability to spend more on the support that you're providing, which again creates the value for that franchise and why they're part of a franchise system instead of doing it on their own. So it's constantly like you're looking at this metric and making sure that it's even, right? Like the franchise fee, the majority of that should be spent getting them open and operating. It's that level of support and training that you're providing to get them from franchise agreement signing to grand opening.
Mhm.
If so much of it is going to the marketing spend and the commissions and the payouts for everybody else, and you're left with a very small portion to actually prepare that new owner to get open, you're going to struggle because you're not able to support them the way that they probably need with a brand new business.
Mhm.
Which again, kind of then that's a snowball that of issues that continues down the line.
Oh yeah, I think of it like an investment, right? So and runway. So in your, back in entrepreneurial seat, so runway is big. Like how much cash do I have to move the business forward, and how long can we float? And
Right.
like in this world of launching a franchise, that money is like the seed fund, right? Like that's like the seed investment for that brand to get them off the ground. And if you need an FBC, so like a franchise business coach, to work with them for 90 days before they start producing enough royalties to cover the cost of that person, it might be 6 to 9 months. If you spend 80% of that because you're working with an FSO who is only working with brokers or you're upside down on it, I know some brands that have kind of been sold into
Mhm.
bankruptcy because they had
Mhm.
negative cash flow every time a unit got sold because they had this major overhead with all these other
Right.
partners and they sold a ton of units, but they were going out and getting two, three, $4 million loans and financing their growth and digging a deep hole. And you put yourself in a position where the only option you have is to sell at that
Right.
point or make huge payments and have no cash flow for 3 to 5 years to get out of the hole. So it's
Right.
tricky. It's really tricky, but you got to think
Tricky.
of it.
And
Go ahead.
keeping an eye on that sold not open number is so important too, right? Like in my experience now, potential franchise owners are coming in more educated than ever. There's just so much information
Mhm.
about franchising and
Yeah.
so many incredible leaders and people talking about it as an option for entrepreneurship and why it makes sense. Um, it is really easy to get stuck in this boat of like, we've sold so many. Look at how many we've sold.
Yeah.
This brand is so hot and people are so into it. And then it's like 10 open and operating. You're like, what? Like, how do you have 200 sold and 10 open? Like, it's not the bragging piece that you think it might be.
Hmm.
Keeping that in that snow, especially even internally as a franchisee, right? Like, they're understanding how many other folks are open and operating because those are the people that they can call and get advice from and be like, how'd you figure out how to get that many members in the month of May? Like, what's your secret? What are you doing?
Hmm.
That's value to those people within the system too. And if you can't get folks open and operating, that's a huge issue that you need to address. And it really does go back to the system, right? Like you
Hmm.
need to build the system to get them open before you're selling a ton of units because that's the key. The opening is the key, not the sale. That was honestly the easy part. The
Yeah.
harder part is now getting them open and operating happy and profitable.
Well, and let's backtrack for a second. You said that twice now, and I want that's one of the things I really wanted to circle back to. Why is that so important? And the reason why I ask is so many people are like, well, I got to go sell units, and there are all these organizations out there like, we'll sell units, and some of them really can, you know,
Yeah.
um, and they don't give a dang about what happens after they sell them. They just want to
Yeah.
they want to collect their cash and then like, hey, good luck, go get them, Tiger. But I had I was at a conference. It was a big conference, and this group is up there bragging about how many units they sell, and but also how awful snow is. And then they flipped, like no joke. The next slide was them showing you a sample of their of a brand that they'd worked with, and it showed how many they'd sold and how many were open. And I was like, you were just talking about how awful snow is, and you have like a 20% open rate right now.
Right.
Like that's
Right.
terrible. So,
I think what's important to maybe back up to is my career in franchising started in operations. So I was in field operations. I worked for franchise owners first in restaurants. So my brain is an operations brain. It's not a sales
mhm,
development brain, which is really interesting and unique kind of in my role too. It's only been about 10 years that I've been focusing just on like the franchise sales and development side of the equation.
mhm,
And when I finally made that choice, it was actually at Garbanzo. They had two positions open when I interviewed. There was a VP of sales and there was a VP of ops, and they were like, choose one. Which one do you want to pursue? Because we're not going to have a both and scenario like I had had until that point. And was where I just knew I had a ton to learn. Like I didn't, at that point, I felt like I could kind of run a restaurant in my sleep. Like it was just, I had figured it out.
mhm,
Um, and sales, I still had so much that I wanted to delve into and figure out and explore. And so I chose the sales path and I kind of haven't looked back since. But I think because of that operations brain, I look at development more than just like initial lead to close because, and especially now that I'm involved more in like the real estate and construction side of things with many brands and with many brands I'd worked with in the past, I know how quickly sales can stop in its tracks when validation is broken. Like
yeah,
it is the number one thing that'll completely have you miss your goals. Um, and that's where everyone is making their money as well, right? Like a franchisee doesn't sign to be a franchisee to just hang out with this territory that they can open units in that they're never going to open units in. Nobody goes into it thinking that. And, there's so many things that I consider within the development pipeline and the process there that a lot of salespeople probably aren't thinking about because I've been on the receiving side of that. I've been the person coaching that franchise owner who like maybe had no transferable skills to bring to the table to run a restaurant, right? And you're like, God, who thought this was a good person to sell a restaurant to? Like
mhm,
poor guy has no idea like any of this works. So even just the lens that I'm looking at when I think about franchise development is wildly different. Um, and I think too, like the number of locations you sell someone, like
Yeah.
as a salesperson, it's easy to be like, you could open five. But in reality, like, do they actually have the cash and the runway to be
Mhm.
opening five over the course of the next 6 years? Like,
Yeah.
is that a responsible, intentional, integrity-full thing to do? Probably not. But
No.
sometimes the salespeople aren't educated in kind of what it looks like on the back end. Like, how does SBA lending work and how do they get the lending for the second location? How long do they actually have to be open and operating before a bank will be like, cool, we can add that as an asset instead of a liability to then lend you the next tranche of cash? There's
Hmm.
just so many things that I think you just don't get exposure to if you haven't been on the ops side of things
Hmm.
that I bring to the table that's just a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, it's the end in mind, right? You have to, yeah. And when we were franchise owners, we owned a couple of territories of a fun brand, and we did it a little bit differently, but we were doing great. Actually, I think fastest launch of anybody so far. But we've sold in January, and they've launched a bunch of new brands. So maybe somebody else has hit it that fast and hard. But
Hmm.
we um we were doing validation calls, and there were several people where like I, as the franchise owner, I would call the CEO and be like, "Hey, not with a 10-foot pole, dude. I would not sell to this guy." And I've also like I've been in franchising for a while now. Like I've coached salespeople, and like
Right.
most franchises, you really need, if it's especially a service brand, you've got to have a sales oriented mindset or at least people skills.
Yeah.
To be a restaurant must have people skills, right? It's a people business first, and then
Yeah.
food second. At least that's how I hear a lot of people describe it. But yeah,
Yeah.
I was trying to prevent bad deals from going through, even because I knew, but a lot of people just talk about how awesome their business is and then go back to work. And then somebody comes into the network that's going to require 10 times as much support and produce half as much outcome. And that brings the whole ops side of the business now to a screeching
Mhm.
halt too, right?
I mean, that's such a good point that you bring up, and something that is so important when you're thinking about scale is the systems and the process and those SOPs that you build have to be for a specific type of potential owner, right? Because if they have entrepreneurial experience, if they've been franchisees before, if they've been in the restaurant industry before,
Mhm.
what you need to give them is wildly different. If you're having to teach them how to read a P&L for the first time, if you're having to teach them how to manage hourly workers and like Gen Zers and figure out how to do that when they've been used to managing VPs and people with years and years of experience, wildly different scenarios. And so that level of coaching and support and training and everything that you have to write down is such a bigger lift,
Mhm.
depending on who you're selling to. And if you're small and you're scrappy and you only have a little bit of capital to use on that support, thinking about and being more intentional about who you're selling to makes a huge difference because
Mhm.
if you don't have to tell someone how to run a small business, if that's just inherently coming with their experience, all you have to teach them is how to do this very specific business. You don't have to worry about all the other pieces that come along with it. So it goes back to that intentional nature of like the marketing dollar and where you're building and why being so careful about that, like avatar persona, whatever you want to call it, because
Yeah.
it impacts so much more down the line where you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize we had to have a training module on X, Y, and Z because none of these people know how to do this very simple thing.
Mhm.
Um, it's really interesting to see kind of what happens once those folks become the open and operating people, like what comes to light in terms of the support needed in the training documents that maybe you didn't think were needed or now an asset that needs to be built.
And it's okay, right? Like no one, even
Okay.
even as
Yeah.
good as Patty is, like there will still be operating docs that she'll have to help somebody create after the fact, right? There's no way around that. But if you're, and you said this earlier, so I want to come back to it, especially in the food industry or brick and mortar or frankly any franchise. I think of it like the same way you do. Like Beijing has these concentric circles, and that's how they define neighborhoods. And like if you're in the first one, that's like all the hyper successful wealthy people. Is ring two
Hmm.
is like extremely successful wealthy people, and the further out ring seven is like, okay, now I'm getting into like the rough neighborhoods. It's not beautiful out here anymore. But like you as a franchisor, you have to create those rings on a map. And I usually tell people 5 hours in the car max. Like you don't want to sell anything outside of that because you got to be able to go hold hands and you got to do ride-alongs and you got to help them build the business. If it's like a home service business, you got to show up and
Mhm.
help them estimate a fence, man. Like someone's got to. And if you start selling people in Anchorage, Alaska and Honolulu and Tallahassee, Florida, you're going to live on a plane and you can't sell any more units or you got to go hire someone earlier. But like you said, if you're deliberate about my strategy geographically as well as demographically, psychographically, right? Like you create these rings that have to overlap. And that also helps your marketing get a little smarter, right? I mean, Patty's not she knows because she's been there, but like once you define that properly and you hit that locale, that region properly, I think
Mhm.
it simplifies so much in not just the sales, but also in then the support and the ops that follow.
Well, and it also enables your sales team understand when to say no, which is a really, really important skill. Like
Mhm.
I tell people all the time, I chase the no. Like I'm not chasing the yes. I'm chasing the no because it helps me get through and stop spending time with people who may not ever buy. Um, but if you know exactly who you're selling to and what skills they need to have and where they need to be located, it's so much easier to then just say like, "Hey, not right now.
Mhm.
We'll keep you in our system. We'll contact you down the line when that market opens up." Or you know what? I don't know that you have the skill set that we want for our own franchisees this early in the game. And it helps you be so disciplined. And it's such a gift to your sales team to be able to be like, say no more than yes, and say yes to these really incredible people who are going to help us be successful in the long run.
Mhm.
It takes discipline. It's really hard to say no when someone's willing to write a check for a lot of money,
Mhm.
which will help you grow. But it's such an important skill, especially early on in the game, because those first few groups of franchise owners are going to be so important to the future growth, like their
Yeah.
success, their input,
Mhm.
their innovation, their, calling you and saying, I just spoke to somebody that I don't think you should sign. And being valuable in that way as you grow and scale your own business, that's huge. And if you sign the right people, they can be a massive asset to your growth.
Yeah, agreed. It's the flywheel, right? I describe, well, other people have said this before me, but the initial 10 or however many it is, 5 to 10, they're the flywheel for your real success in franchise development. They also create the cash flow through successful business operations that give you the money to improve your marketing and add the more support people. So you really have to think of them as your most important asset. Uh,
Right.
you can't do anything if the first 10 are struggling. Uh,
Yeah. And they're really the ones who are selling the next 10, 20 too. Like they're consider them on your sales team because they can either help you be successful or not. And it's mostly up to you whether that's the case.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree. Patty, so we've talked a lot about trying to help people like be more efficient in the way they approach this. What are some of the tricks of the trade, things that you've found help you create scale as you're helping people to work on frandev and the franchise operations? How do people get to that point where they can really do it quickly and smoothly?
Yeah, I mean, so much of it for me has revolved around technology and just utilizing technology the way that it's meant to be utilized. I've walked into so many brands, whether it was in a C-suite level role or, as a consultant, fractionally, where they have an incredible tech stack. They have all the tools. They're just not utilizing them well, or even capitalizing on what they have. I've also walked into so many brands where there's a ton of like repetition or duplicate things that they're using in terms of technology. Like you already have G Suite, but you're paying for Zoom. Like, why are you paying for Zoom? You have Google Meets. It's already there and you're paying for it. Silly things that actually will add up pretty quickly when you're trying to scale efficiently and making sure that your dollars are all being spent wisely. Um, and obviously AI, but it before AI even gets involved, like if you don't know where your system is broken, if you don't know where the efficiencies can be found because your process is so buttoned up and your systems are so buttoned up and your tech is doing exactly what you need it to do, bringing in AI is not actually going to fix anything. You need to know where to insert it to make you faster and better and more efficient. But
Mhm.
so many brands are like skipping the hard part and the not sexy part of making sure that their systems are set up correctly and they're using their tech stack really well to
Right.
then be able to insert AI. But for me, like
Mhm.
the reason I have become such an expert in a lot of like tech things is because it has the ability to make my job so much better, easier, faster when the tech is working for me and not against me. And in so many cases, I've walked in and like they have a great CRM, they're just scratching the surface on how to be using it. Like they don't
Mhm.
have workflow set up, they don't have templated email set up, they don't, there's no automation, there's no ongoing pinging and the follow-up that's needed in frandev that can seem so exhausting when you're like checking in on that application again. It's me again, checking in on that application. Were you able to do that application? It If you can get automated and have really incredible templates that follow up with people that aren't just like a one-off email that you're sending every single time, not
Yeah.
only can you hit more people, but you're telling a better story. Like,
Mhm.
hey, while you're working on that application, I figured watching this video would be super helpful. It was taken at our last conference of two of our amazing franchise owners. Like, that's a great follow-up for somebody where you're waiting on their application and maybe something that'll get them to move. Whereas just me personally reaching out every time probably isn't the most
Mm-mm.
effective way to be doing it. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, for me, tech has been everything. It's something I'm super passionate about, obviously, but it's honestly been what has probably positioned me in a bit of a different category in franchise development too, and just made me really successful in that space because I know how to use the technology to make me better and to multiply me, which
Mhm.
is really important, right? Like
Yeah.
I've often been the fran dev team of one, and it seems like I might have 10 people on my team because I'm just utilizing technology the right way.
Oh yeah. Well, you're preaching to the choir. Carry on. I totally get it and support it. And you mentioned two aspects I want to highlight of effective franchise development. Then I want to flip the script and then apply the same question to the ops side. And that's the part I think most people don't talk about as much because,
Yep.
Frandev, everyone's like, oh, hey, you got to automate follow-up. You got to text, call, email, blah, blah, blah. Like have those conversations, 40 hours, 50 hours a week. But the thing that you said is value. Like you're really saying like you've got to give value with every touch. And I just want to highlight that. It's a very tactical thing that she said, but man, it's important. Some people are I told somebody once I will fire you if I ever see an email that says just following up. Like that is the most useless email on the planet. It makes you an unprofessional salesperson. You should always say, "Hey Steve, I've had a lot of people who had questions about this. I thought you might find this useful." Or, "Hey, while you're working on that application, nudge, right? Nudge.
Yeah.
Here's something that from our, like that was such a brilliant way to approach it. But I just wanted to highlight that approach that I don't see a lot of people doing very effectively, which is lead with value. Lead with value.
Hmm.
Give, then take, right? And a lot of people just don't do it that way. So thank you. I thought it was a great insight.
Yeah, and I think too, there's just I run into so many situations where there are so many assets. There's so many podcasts, there's so many like press releases, there's so many incredible stories. There's like a folder full of videos that nobody's ever utilized or edited or they've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on them, then they're just sitting there. And I'm like, why aren't we using these incredible assets
Hmm.
to tell the story? They want to hear it from more than just the salesperson. They want to get information along the way. And I would rather be curating that delivery of information based on where they are in their deal stages than having them just like randomly search the internet or use AI or, scope things out on LinkedIn, whatever they might be doing.
Hmm.
I want to curate that path for them. Like, why wouldn't you take advantage of that? And technology is how you do it. You just set it up and off it goes. And in every stage, they're getting all of these lovely little pings that, again, are offering just as much as they're asking, right? Like offering more information, offering more education, as much as you're following up on the last task you sent them.
Oh man, yeah, like frandev, the sales process sometimes is like you want to invite people, they're hungry, right? They want to come over for dinner. So you invite them over to your house for dinner and you're like, "Hey, we're sitting at the table eating. The food's in the kitchen. Go get some food." And like you make them work for it and go try to hunt it and find it. And they come out with like crackers and peanut butter and you're eating a filet mignon. Like you've got to take them into the kitchen. You've got to show them where the food's. You got to prepare it for them. You got to hand it to them. You got to serve it up. And like you really have to flip the script and be the servant and give them everything you think they need along the way. Like the top five questions or reasons why people don't buy from you, and the top five reasons they do. Each one of those is a separate follow-up touch in your sequences,
Yep.
period. Like it's easy, but people don't do it. And these assets that are sitting in their pantry, right, that no one's eating. Holy
Hmm.
cow, like video is king right now. You want to triple your email engagement? Video, easy answer. And that's the same on frandev as is on unit operations. Like when I now switch now, if you don't mind, Patty, let's wrap up with some ideas on franchise operations. How do you apply the same nurturing automation tools to franchise operations to create scale and elevation there where a lot of people aren't right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think leaning on technology again there is so important. And if you're able to, there are ways to do things in a way that's really scrappy and can save you a ton of money. You don't have to launch a learning management system or LMS like day one when you're an
Mhm.
emerging franchisee. It's just not necessary, right? But thinking about when and if we're big enough to have a learning management system, what's the training paths we would put them on? Let's
Mhm.
put them all in folders and make sure that like the real estate folder in my Google Drive is really organized and it's got everything that they need, and we're going to do video calls and we're going to have a schedule and we're going to have a spreadsheet that tracks all of it. But that when you're ready to switch that over, you've kind of worked out exactly what it'll look like. So the building of the LMS is so much easier. It's more cost efficient because you've already built the system. It just lived in a simpler place. And now you're up leveling and kind of building out a really cool LMS tool. I tell ops people all the time, like AI video and making yourself an avatar and delivering information where, whether it be a Loom video where you're walking them through whatever it is, whatever tool they have to learn, but also just delivering mass messages. Like, don't make everything a novel of an email. Like, send a video for a change. Guess what? It might be viewed more than your massive email, and there's a way to track it differently. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
um, there's so much in operations where delivering the information, validating that it's been seen, read, understood, um, and then making sure that then it's been implemented in some way. That's really been the key for me. And I can tell you when I was in kind of the franchisee seat and in the operations view, we were just surviving the day, right? Like at the end of the day, like you're serving the food, you're taking care of the customers, like
Yeah.
that marketing promotion that you think is really, really cool. Like we're just trying to survive. I remember at Panera Bread, like one of the most annoying things that we would have to do in operations was when they would constantly change like the POP in the restaurant. So they would like send you the new banner that hangs above the cash register. They'd send you the new panels for like all over the restaurant. You'd have to like pull down that display and like put the new one up. And then you'd have to throw all of the old stuff into the dumpster and make sure that everything was set up perfectly. There was like IKEA like displays that you have to like sort how to put together. And all of us would stay way late after close
Uh-huh.
trying to set up all this frickin' POP. They would do it like what felt like once a month. And constantly in my head as an operator, I was like, this is such a waste of labor. Like that I need four people to stay after hours, pay them overtime to just like change out the freaking banner. I
Yes.
don't think it makes that much of a difference in terms of like where people are spending their money. But
Mhm.
sometimes the things that we think about at like the exec level that we're like, this is going to be so great. It's going to make such a big difference. Our franchise owners are going to be so stoked about it. Like actually are not the things that are moving the needle. Um, I think using technology and AI in the places where automation, pushing of information is really valuable,
Mhm.
where putting like the humans in the human seats out in the field with your franchise owners, shoulder to shoulder in the field, video calls that are really supportive and organized and have follow-ups and check-ins and all kinds of things to help your ops team stay on point is really important.
Yeah.
Um, I think too many people are like pushing the wrong things and focused on the wrong things and not just listening to their franchise owners and like the operators of their locations. Like what actually would be helpful? Because we have a ton of ideas, but
Yeah.
we're not the ones out there, getting quotes on the fence and serving that bowl of noodles and not understanding that that new piece of kitchen equipment that we thought was amazing in our test kitchen actually doesn't work when
Mhm.
it lives in the true restaurant. Um, so yeah,
Mhm.
there's so much that you can do with tech and AI on the ops side that I get excited about, that I don't get to play with nearly as much because I'm not in that role anymore. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's a
Mhm.
ton to be done there.
Yeah, I agree. No, anytime there's data to analyze, anytime there's follow-up and dialogue, anytime there's something creative that needs to be created, content needs to be written, There are so many ways you can leverage AI right now without even getting a real expensive tool. That's kind of a no-brainer. Do you know Monica Rothbury?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. You said almost verbatim something she said on my podcast like 6 months ago. She was like, I remember some of these freaking banners and signs and like thinking how
Oh my,
worthless this is. Yeah, sometimes I think the if we have the right efficiencies set up, if we have the right processes set up, if we're using the right tools to create back office, home office bandwidth so that we can do more than just sometimes you know how it is in the franchisor office, it's just as frenetic, right? Like where there's just not time to stop and think. And there's also
right,
not time to listen. And that's the thing that I keep seeing over and over again is the brands that have created enough efficiency, like you've been talking about this whole time, on the frandev and on the unit like launch and franchise operations, FBR side of things. Like if or FBC side, if you've done a good enough job creating efficiency there, you have enough time to be deliberate and to listen and to hear what's going on in the market and to spend time with your franchise owners in a way that you can then, I mean, your biggest asset isn't the business model. It's the
right,
brilliant minds that you've brought in to operate the business model that are going to make it better, in my
right,
opinion. So,
right.
yeah, give us a couple of, if you don't mind, maybe riff on that concept for a minute, and let's wrap up on that of what's the net result, right? The desired state if you do these things and build efficiencies, what does it give the brand in the end?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, like I think about turnover a lot. Like I remember just even being in operations, the most stressful thing was when people would leave. You spend all this time training them and onboarding them, and they would walk away. Franchisors face the same thing at their home office. When you spend so much time getting someone kind of up and running, and then for whatever reason, they leave because their job is harder than they thought. They have to do too much manual work. All they do is go on back-to-back calls and they don't even have time to pee. Um, the kind of balance that is now needed for people to have kind of this ability to go to work and leave work where it was. And, the fact that all of us are on all of the time because our phone gives people access to us at all hours. Um, there's a piece that comes when you have systems built and you have automations built and you have things that are happening despite the humans having to push the button to do the thing that needs to happen,
Yeah.
that gives your team freedom to be able to focus on the things that they're really passionate about, that they do really incredibly well,
Mhm.
that you want them spending their time and energy on, that also lets them have a life. Like I can be doing this podcast and there is a ton of stuff happening right now in my work world that doesn't need me to physically be pushing send on an email or manually updating the thing that needs updating. And I can be chill and I can focus on you and not worry about, all of this stuff happening in the background with multiple clients and just people needing me. Your team deserves the same, right? So I constantly with my operator mindset, I'm always looking at like how do we just make the system better? Like how do we just build the machine and let the machine run
Mhm.
and then put my people in the place where they're most valuable, where they're pushing the needle in the way that I want them to push and not spinning their wheels like in an email inbox or on like inefficient calls where no work is being done,
Mhm.
but it seems really busy all the time. Like that's not what I want to be seeing for any of the brands that I work with. But even, when I was leading brands or in some of those C-suite positions, like my own team being like, make a freaking video and send that to everybody. You don't have to individually call every single franchisee to deliver that piece of information. Like,
Right.
that is
Yeah.
not a thing you should be spending your time on, or
Mhm.
that's not like the value I need you to bringing to the table. And it's so true what you mentioned already, which is like, you want everyone's brilliant brain coming and offering brilliant solutions and innovations and ways to do things better. When the human brain is bogged down by minutia and pushing papers and tasks,
Mhm.
you are losing the most valuable side of the humans around you, whether it be your own team, your franchise owners, potential franchise owners, like all of that.
Yeah.
I want someone to come to the table and have enough freedom and margin in their day to still have that creative, innovative, brilliant brain like coming to us with ideas constantly. You don't have to pursue them all. You don't have to do all the things. It's
Mhm.
just when you give people the margin specifically because you've added so much efficiency to their day, you're ultimately getting a better human who will most likely stay longer with you because the culture that you've built is like, hey, if we can do that automatically for you, like, why are you wasting? I tell my team all the time, I have two clients, I manage teams on both sides. My job is to remove barriers. Like, that is it. That is my job. Tell me where you're stuck. Tell me where you have something that feels really manual or that's like a time suck right now. And my job is to make that go away, to give you back that time. Um, that's what I spend the majority of my time on. And I think as leaders, if we're thinking about things that way and thinking about technology that we bring on that way, like, is this ultimately going to give my team back the time that they need to be really good at their job? Or
Mhm.
is it just going to create more barriers because the tech isn't going to work, or we're not going to implement it the right way, or we didn't even choose well on the
Mhm.
partner we're bringing on because we didn't know what questions to ask? Um,
Right.
Ultimately, I feel like, yeah, that's the goal is like you've built the machine is working, everyone's happy, productive, and, my FBR scores are off the charts in terms of highly satisfied employees and franchisees. Like that's the goal, right?
Mhm.
It's a
Yeah.
scaling business that continues to scale. We don't have a crazy snow. We're opening operations efficiently, and franchise owners are doing what they imagined they should be doing when they signed
Mhm.
up.
Yeah. Rule number one, right? Make your franchise owners wildly successful, and everything else tends to work itself out in the
Yeah,
end. Yeah. Patty,
it's
you're awesome.
shockingly simple.
Yeah, it is incredibly simple, but yet really hard sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
you're awesome. Thanks. I think we could go for another hour, just like picking brains, diving deeper. I mean, we didn't even really get to talk about AI as much, but you have a lot of good content out there. I'll point people towards you. If anyone wants to reach out to you right now, because like I would like to pick her brain more. I have a snow problem, or I'd like to figure out how to accelerate my friend dev and balance it with operations. How should they reach out to you?
Yeah, easiest way is probably to find me on LinkedIn, Patti Rother, Patty with an I. I think I'm one of the few Patties in franchising. And then our website is really easy. It's franchise.dev. So really easy to find us there as well and set up an appointment if you need to. But
Mhm.
LinkedIn's probably the easiest way that people find me.
Yeah, you just posted a couple of great things in the last 2 days that I just saw this morning. So yeah, you're easy to find. Thanks again, Patty, for sharing some insights, and I sure appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, Dave.
Yep.